Hello and welcome to another episode of The Break Room. I'm your host, Lucinda Underwood. Today's topic is all about maintaining effective pricing strategies in your shop. And joining me for her second appearance is Bogi Lateiner, owner of Bogi's Garage, All Girls Garage, and the host of With Her Two Hands podcast. Bogi, hi, welcome back to The Break Room. It's so lovely to have you back again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Yes, you're becoming one of our resident experts, and I love it because you've always got great stuff to share. So today, our topic, we're talking about pricing and maintaining effective pricing strategies. And, that sometimes can be a challenge, really kind of knowing what to charge and really being able to accurately assess the value that you're providing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the age-old question. What do I charge?
It really is. It really is. And as a business owner, it can be, it's funny. I mean, I know I'm speaking just for myself here, but I know it's something I spend a lot of time on and a lot of research on. So we're going to dive into all things pricing. And I want to start by just asking you, your advice and kind of methods you use. Like, how do you firstly kind of analyze the profitability of different services offered through in your shop? And then how do you improve that profitability? Excuse me.
Yeah. So I guess we have to kind of rewind a moment, though, because you can't analyze any profitability if you're not tracking your numbers and you're not documenting things, right?
Very good point.
And so I talk to shops regularly, and they aren't tracking any of their numbers whatsoever. And then they're like, should I raise my prices? I'm like, I don't know. Should you? Like, we have no data to go off of. So the first step is always tracking and documenting. And if you're not looking at the different types of categories of services, of repairs, then you have no way of knowing whether one is more profitable than the other, whether you're losing money on something or not. There's this old saying that goes, what you track improves, right? What you document improves, what you focus on improves. And so sometimes just the very act of documenting and tracking and putting things into categories and looking at neat little spreadsheets, it forces you to pay attention to it. It forces you to see it and go, ooh, that number's not very good. I'm actually paying people for the privilege of doing their oil changes. Let's fix that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
It's the thing of you can't manage what you don't measure, right? Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. That's a very, very good point. Okay. So first have that process down. Are there any specific recommendations that you would have for listeners that maybe aren't tracking that stuff right now? Like, how would they go about doing that? And then kind of move us on to the kind of pricing analysis after that.
Totally. I mean, hopefully you're using some sort of shop management program, and then that makes it a little bit easier. And however you have your shop management system set up, assuming you have it set up to put things into different categories, then it's as easy as just regularly running the reports and paying attention to those things. I think it's really smart to have a couple of key performance indicators that you are really focusing on and pulling those every day, if not every week, and put it on a smaller spreadsheet. Make your own or pay for a program or whatever you want to do, but you can keep it really simple. It could be just a piece of paper that you keep on a clipboard by your desk that has 5 key performance indicators. And every day at the end of the day, you run your numbers and you write it down. And at the end of the week, you can look at them and say, ooh, we've got a problem here, or not. If you do have a shop management program, set things up in a way that will allow you to track them. So if you want to go down to the minutia, do I make more money on belts than I do on hoses? Then make sure you're categorizing them or able to categorize them. If you don't really care about that so much and you just want to know repairs versus maintenance, then that's okay too. It's just a matter of setting it up to give you the data that you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. And I really like that point that you made of it doesn't necessarily need to be hyper complex to be effective. And I think, and then that's a really good point, because I think sometimes as well, we tend to get overwhelmed by things that maybe if we don't have a full understanding initially, we get overwhelmed easily. So that's a really good point. Thank you for making that.
Totally. And so we get these big, crazy, complicated spreadsheets. And like, I love a spreadsheet, but I'll still shut down if there's too many boxes and too many numbers. And, keep it simple, stupid, as my mom always used to say.
Yep.
Give yourself just a couple of columns, but do it every day. And that's going to make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's the consistency that's really going to have the effect there, isn't it?
Yeah, because otherwise you don't catch the problem until the end of the year when you're doing taxes with your accountant. And you're like, oh, dang, we weren't profitable at all. If you're looking at it every week, now we can course correct a little bit at a time each day, each week, each month, so that hopefully by the end of the year, we're in a good position. And that's really kind of more important. I think shop owners tend to get caught up on, is my labor rate what it should be? What is my my competitors, what are they charging? And I think you're asking the wrong question if you're asking what's everybody else charging, or do I need to charge more? Only your numbers can tell you that. I don't know if you need to charge more. Are you profitable?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. And I think we do get caught in those traps of focusing too much on the external, right? And not really having a clear idea of our own value and our own value proposition, right? Yeah. I love that. And actually, you know what? That leads on really nicely, because the next kind of subject I want to dive into is, communicating that the pricing of your services to customers in order to justify your value and to really highlight the benefits and the quality of the work that you provide. What are your thoughts around that? Do you have any tips around how to communicate with customers on that level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most shop consultants will say the very first thing they tell every new client that they're working with is raise your labor rate. And I'm like, well, yes, but, most shops are probably not charging a high enough labor rate. They're probably not marking up their parts enough. We know this to be so. However, you can't just willy-nilly increase your prices without having a corresponding value to go along with it. And I think if you focus on providing value and you are providing your customers this like bend over backwards, over the top, amazing customer service where they're having such a great experience and they feel like they can trust you and they don't feel intimidated and they don't feel overwhelmed, this amazing things happen. They don't even ask about the price.
It's wild, isn't it?
It's wild. Like, I've raised my labor rate at my shop and had nobody say anything because they still walked out the door feeling good about the value that they got for their money. And that breaks down to so many different things. It is not about the dollars and cents. It's not about any of that. It's about how do they feel when they walk out of your door? Have you given them value in their paperwork and their documentation, right? I always say customers kind of look at it as like they're paying per word. So if you give them an invoice that charges them $6,500 and all it says is replace engine, they're like, wow, I paid $6,500 for 2 words.
Right. For
right?
what? Yeah.
But if you give them this thorough documentation that shows what you tested, what you checked, how you got to your conclusions, what you did, all of the things that you put in there, tell them everything that you've done because you did $6,500 worth of work.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Show them that. Tell them that. Make a show of it when they come to pick up their car so that you're going through all of the things that your highly skilled technicians did to make sure that their car is happy and safe and healthy and will stay on the road instead of on the side of the road. Build that value with them. And then they don't even ask.
Right.
Price becomes secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned trust before as well. And, you're providing value and earning trust. If you don't really effectively communicate with your customers, if they don't have a good understanding of what you've done, there's no way you can build that trust either, right?
Exactly.
So that communication piece is very, very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. So, when we're talking about kind of pricing reviews, how often is this something that shop owners should look at realistically? And are there any particular kind of factors that would influence, make a shop owner think, okay, I need to review my pricing? What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I think it's something that's happening regularly, right? Our parts pricing is fluctuating all the time, right? You order a hose one day and it's one price, you order it 2 weeks later and it's a different price, right? So we don't do that on a set price. I'm not charging X number of dollars for that hose. I'm charging X percentage above what I paid for
Right.
it. So that's a constantly fluctuating thing. And having a parts matrix or pricing matrix set up is really important because it takes the guesswork and the emotion out of it. So that's crucial. As far as your labor rate, I think that comes down to that kind of regularly looking at your numbers and seeing if we're not profitable, where is the hole in the bucket? Are we not charging enough? Do we not have enough customers? Or are we spending too much? Right? Like, where is the hole in the bucket? And if the hole in the bucket is that you're not charging enough, then we look at that. Another really good litmus test, I think, for raising your labor rate is when your shop is too busy. So you've gotten so busy that you are turning customers away. Raise your labor rate.
Right.
Eliminate your bottom 20% of customers that are really there for price only and keep your 80% of your customers who just appreciate your value. The 80% isn't even going to question your labor rate change. But raising your labor rate throttles you back enough but gets rid of the headache customers and increases your profitability all in one fell swoop. So that's a good litmus test. If you're too busy, raise your labor rate.
Yeah, and that's such a good point as well, because again, I think, as small business owners, we tend to, we're so used to, wanting customers and wanting work. When you get to that point where you're hitting capacity, I mean, that's a great place to be because you then have some choice on, the customers that you want to take on and those kind of things. So I think, again, it's having that presence of mind, isn't it? To kind of say, okay, can I get a bit more juice out of this, right?
Yeah. And would you rather have less customers who are higher quality or more customers that are more headache, right?
Right.
The 80-20 rule, 80% of your headaches come from 20% of your customers. And they're the bottom 20%. And then 80% of your profits come from the top 20% of your customers. So let's strive for more of those and less of the other.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely. And in the key message that's going sort of through this whole conversation, just to kind of take it back, is make sure that you are paying attention to that data. Make decisions based, first find a good way to collect it, and then really kind of learn how to analyze it so you can make informed decisions from an internal standpoint, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm hearing shop owners saying, but what about what my next door neighbor is charging?
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Handling the competitive pressure. Let's talk about that for a second.
If you're providing enough value, like, I don't care what your next door neighbor is charging. Don't care. I'll tell you a story. I used to have, my shop went through several different locations. And one of the locations, I actually shared a bathroom with the shop next door to me. So we both had we were both in a shop and then there was like a little alleyway in between us and we had a shared bathroom. So our parking lot was shared. Our customers saw each other's businesses. He charged half of my labor rate. And yet I would still take customers from him all the time because they saw how people were treated at my shop versus how people were treated at his shop. And they didn't mind paying twice as much money to be treated well.
Right.
So I do not care
Yeah.
what the other person down the block is charging. Now, that being said, if you're not charging enough and everybody around you is charging more, what are you attracting? Right? If
Yeah.
everybody's at 100 plus an hour or 150 plus an hour and you're at 60,
Yeah. What message is that sending?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's this idea of we want to be the cheapest or we want to provide great value. Inexpensive does not equal providing great value.
Right. Right.
And it's not, I would dare say, not only does it not serve you and your company, but I think it doesn't serve the entire automotive industry when we underprice ourselves, because what it is doing is devaluing what our technicians do. It's devaluing the service that we offer, which is keeping people and their families safe and on the road. Like, that's
Right.
huge. We keep the world moving. And when we devalue that by saying, oh, I'm going to give it to you at cost and I'm going to charge you $40 an hour because I want to be nice, what we're saying is what we do has no value.
Yeah.
And then we can't pay our technicians what they deserve to be paid. We can't provide the amenities that we want to provide. And then we wonder why we as an industry doesn't get the respect that we think that we deserve.
Right.
Well, we've been undervaluing ourselves.
Right. And that's the thing. It's, it's that chain reaction that actually ends up affecting quality as well. Because again, thinking about if you have a team of technicians that aren't being paid fairly, quality of work is probably going to go down. Engagement is certainly going to go down. You mentioned about amenities. That's a huge part of the customer experience as well. So it's really kind of understanding, I think fundamentally it's understanding the difference between price and value. Number one, they're two very, very different things. And also just like you say, kind of, refusing to fall into that trap of, oh, they're charging less than me, I need to undercut them. Because let's face it, that's just a race to the bottom for everybody, right? The whole industry. So yeah, I think that's such a valuable point. And I think, it does, you have to just be able to sit back and be confident in what you offer as well, right? Confidence is big.
And if you're not confident in what you offer, fix that, right?
Right, yeah, find out why.
Yeah, if you're like, well, I'm not really sure we offer such great service. Okay, well, what needs to change about it, and let's improve that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And become, like you said at the beginning, what you focus on improves. Become focused on those areas and you will see improvement. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so what about complex jobs? Right? There's one thing kind of pricing, you've got your labor rate, your pricing, standard maintenance, standard oil changes, usual kind of repairs. Does your approach vary when pricing for like high value complex work? Are there any special kind of considerations or strategies that you would recommend using for this type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pricing strategy doesn't necessarily change. My caveat is don't let it scare you from charging what you're worth, right? I think sometimes we get in these really problematic cars and we're like, oh, well, I can't charge the customer all of this time that it took me to diagnose it. If it was legitimately spent time, yes, you absolutely can. If you had a brand new tech on it who didn't really know what they were doing and a master tech could have found it in less time, then maybe we don't charge them for the 6 hours that the apprentice spent on it. However, if you're doing legitimate testing and diagnosis and work to get to what the problem is, then that's the legitimate time that you can charge for. Where the challenge, I think, really is for most people is communicating the value in those situations. We're in such a highly technical field. Customers already often walk in the door feeling vulnerable and feeling like they're going to be taken advantage of. And then we have this complicated problem that we have to explain to them and build the value of why they have $600 in testing.
Right.
Ooh, right? Like that's a hard sell if you're not taking the time to explain it. And I think that's where that relationship building and having those hard conversations, I always say, give the customer as much information as they want.
Right.
So if they want to know all the nitty gritty, give it to them.
Yeah.
If they just want it fixed, help them understand what it is that you're doing to get to this problem. And I find that the best thing is analogies, right? Give them all of the analogies that you can that equate things to things that they understand. So when you have that crazy problem that's like, we fixed this one thing and then we uncovered this other thing and then we fixed that and we uncovered something else. Like I call it a multi-layered onion problem. And I talk to my customers about that. Like we peeled back a layer, we had to
Right.
fix what we saw first. And then we dug in and we peeled back that layer. We found something else that was causing that. And we wouldn't have known unless we'd peeled the layer back. So getting them on board in the beginning and saying, this might be one of those complicated multi-layer onion problems that like might take us a while, but if you hang in there with us, we're going to get to the bottom of it together. It's me and you against your car, right? Like we're going to figure this out. This is me and you against your car. We're going to get to the bottom of it, but I need you to hang with me and know that like it might get a little ugly,
Yeah.
but we're going to get to the bottom. And when you get them on board at the beginning, then at the end, no matter how much you charged them, they're like, you found it. You're amazing.
Right. And there's a couple of things that you mentioned there, a couple of points I want to hit on, one, that communication piece, right? Really making sure you are taking the time to explain it in terms that the customer understands, right? You don't want to just assume that they have the same level of technical knowledge as you because they quite likely don't. That's why they're coming to you, number one. But also that managing of expectations is huge because, again, it's like, I suppose it's kind of like going to the dentist, right? But like you go in, you take your car in and you're waiting for that call from the shop and you're like, oh, they're just going to call me and I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know how much this is going to cost me, but I'm worried about it. I'm anxious about it. Whereas if you have that conversation initially and say, look, it could be this or it could be something more. This is what we're going to do to find out, peeling back those layers, as you said. That's a great analogy. And really managing those expectations. It's, that little bit of upfront work is going to have a real big benefit to the outcome, I would say.
It's everything. I mean, you'd be surprised like how many of the major problems that shops tend to face get resolved with a couple of sentences, right? With very little tweaking of what you do. I think most shops are in it from the right place. They're in it to take care of their customers. They want to be their customer's hero. They want to keep them safe and do the right thing. Most shops are not the shady shops looking to take advantage of their customers.
Yeah.
But the stereotype is that we are, right? And I teach these basic car care classes for women, and every single time I teach them, the majority of the women in the class are like, ugh, I hate it when you go in for an oil change and then they come back with this laundry list of things that you need and it's just so crazy. And when I explain it to them as like, this is your yearly physical, right? So when you go in, it's my job to tell you everything that I see so that you don't get stuck down the road. But if these shops were saying, I'm really glad to have your car in here for an oil service. While you're here, we're going to go ahead and do a thorough inspection on your vehicle so that you have a good state of health of your car. We'll give you a call and go over that list with you. No pressure, but my job is to just give you a state of health. Ooh, now it's a different story. Now the customer's like expecting that inspection. They're expecting that upsell of additional work because you told them right when they dropped off.
Right.
So it's a couple of sentences make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, as opposed to just dropping your keys off in the morning and then, getting that call later on looking for approval for work. And I know, you got me thinking too, because again, that transparency is so key, right? It's, especially in our industry, transparency is always something. I work a lot with dealerships, as you know. It's always a very common topic. And I know of some people that are really utilizing video actually as well. So they are, when they do the inspection on the vehicle, they're actually documenting it on video, explaining it to the customer where they can actually see it as well. And I think that can be really powerful too. Again, just to get over that kind of that trust hurdle and the preconceptions that they might have. Have you seen that in use at all, kind of in your work?
Absolutely, and it's fantastic. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you have a waiter or if the customer's there, you can bring them out and show them. And when they can see it or hear it or feel it, then they don't ask questions, right?
Right.
It isn't about how much money is this. They're like, ooh, that's bad. Fix that. Yeah. And so in lieu of having them there, video is amazing. We have all of this at our fingertips. And it's so simple to help people understand. I think we really have to shift our mindset. Back in the day, and I still see this in shops all over the country, the big sign that says employees only beyond this point, right? No customers allowed out in
Yep.
the shop. And everything's behind this like veil of mystery. And like, we're not gonna tell you what the magic is that's going on behind those doors. And it's like, no, let's show them. Let's invite them in. Let's open the doors. Help them see how complicated today's vehicles are.
Right.
Help them see how scary it is when their ball joint is bad and how their wheel moves all over the place and it's not supposed to, right? Like, let them see it and touch it and feel it and understand it. And when they do, price becomes a non-issue.
Right.
You've built trust with them. You've built rapport with them. They now understand why they need to do it. You've built that expectation. And then when you say it's $850 to fix it, they're like, when can you have it done?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've also taken that time to educate as well. Like I'm one of these people, I always want to learn, right? So I'm someone who likes things explained to me. If there's, something technical I don't understand, I'm like, I want to know, I want to learn. Doesn't mean I'm going to go and do it myself. Still going to pay an expert to do it. But having that understanding, I think, is so key. And I think that elevates that customer experience even more as well.
It does, absolutely. And I go back to that statement of like, educate people as much as they would like to be educated, because
Right.
not everybody wants to know.
You're
So-
right. Yeah.
And it's simple questions, right? So you call them up and you say, hey, great news. We figured out what's going on with your car. Okay, awesome. It's your Ganooter valve. And they're like, okay. Like, do you know what a Ganooter valve is?
I can tell you I don't.
Right? Because it doesn't exist.
Okay, perfect. I was like, that sounds fake.
I know, right? It's totally fake. So they will either say, yes, I do. What's wrong with it? Or how much is it going to cost to fix it? Or they're going to say, no, I don't. Now, the next question is, would you like to know? Right? So if they say, no, I don't know what it is, would you like to know? They might say no.
Yeah, you're right.
No,
yeah.
I don't really care. Don't tell me. I'm not interested. How much is it going to cost to fix it and how long is it going to take, right? What happens if I don't do it? Or they might say, yeah, what the heck is that? And
Right.
now we can have a conversation about it. But if they don't want to know, don't tell them. Also, if they already know, don't insult them by explaining it to them because they already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And try not to let your biases get in the way there. Just ask the question. Just ask the question.
That's such a good point as well. It's kind of, meeting your customer where they're at and what type of service they want to receive, because everyone is different. You just mentioned the word bias as well. And I want to go back to one point when we were talking about, pricing of a large or complex job, right? That kind of onion thing again, when we're looking at pricing that, I think a trap that we can fall into probably is biased on what we make a judgment on how we think a customer is going to react to a quote, right? And it's in my training, in what when we're talking kind of selling cars and things like that, it's it's never judge a customer based on your own wallet, right?
Yeah.
It's being aware of those bias. Just because you think oh, that's a large amount of money, you're moving that value to one side as well. And again, is that something that you see when you're kind of working with shop owners?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it in myself when I first started out, and so I have a funny story I'll share with you.
Love your stories.
Because I do. I see this all the time, and I think we, like you said, we kind of like our bias is based on what we would think was expensive. And that may not be the case. So let's go back to, this must be like 18 years ago. I was just starting out in my business and I did not have very much money at all. I was broke as a joke. And I so wanted to take care of people. And I associated a lot of money with like, I was putting them out. I was taking their money. Like it just felt like I was so uncomfortable with taking people's money. And so I had this customer who had a BMW. He came in, he had a bunch of work done like a month prior. He'd just done a heap of work. And then he came in like a month later, he had done something, his engine had gone. He needed to replace the engine.
Okay.
And I felt so bad. I was like, you just did all this work. I feel so awful. Like all the guilt was happening. And so I call him up and I'm talking around it, like just talking around it in circles. And finally he goes, Bogi, it's not a pregnancy test. Tell me how much it's going to cost. And I was like, okay, got it. I'm like, it'll be $6,800. He's like, when can you have it done? I'm like, a week from tomorrow. He's like, call me a week from tomorrow then.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't really that hard at all. I made that really hard. That was all me.
Yeah.
And so I was really fortunate very early on to get that so clearly illustrated to me that it just kind of changed me from that point forward. I was like, this is my stuff. This isn't my customer stuff. This is my stuff. And I need to let that go and not put it on them.
Yeah, absolutely. But also then not take too much on yourself as well. Like you were saying, kind of like that guilt and things like that. And I mean, it's because you're a good person, right? Which is great. It's a great trait to have, but can pose challenges in business. And I mean, I can that story and just kind of that way of thinking, I can relate to so hard because I'm a lot earlier on in my business and I catch myself there quite a lot. So I love that.
So now you just need to remember, it's not a pregnancy test, Lucinda.
It's not a pregnancy test. Just say it. just say it. Just tell them how much it's going to cost.
Yep.
I love it. We're getting close to wrapping up time already. It goes
so fast.
It always does, doesn't it? We have good conversations, but I just want to kind of throw it to you. Is there anything around kind of pricing strategies you think we haven't touched on, or any kind of final thoughts, I guess?
Yeah. And the biggest thing I would say is really just have confidence in what you offer and the skill that you offer. Our technicians today are working on rolling computers. They're more complicated than the first, possibly even the second space shuttle, let's be honest these days.
It's true.
We deserve to charge a fair price, right? Now, this doesn't mean go out and price gouge, but it does mean be confident in the service that we provide for our society, the service that we provide for our customers. If you don't feel like you're providing that value, work on that, right? But know that we are worthy to charge a fair and reasonable rate, right? Doctors, lawyers charge $800 an hour and nobody bats an eye at it.
Right. Yeah.
If we collectively as an industry raise the bar, raise the value of what we're doing, increase our prices to what we deserve to be paid, then we can pay our technicians what they deserve to be paid. Then we can demand the respect that we deserve. I think it's all combined into one thing. And it all starts with believing in yourself and believing in the value that you offer your community, and being confident in that. Don't be afraid to charge people what you deserve to be paid.
You've said that so perfectly. That's such a great point. And I think one that would really resonate with the listeners. Great final thoughts. One more thing though, before we go, I do want to just talk to you a bit more about what you've got going on right now, because I know you're doing lots of things in the industry. I know you kind of, you teach people, you have your podcast, you have your garage, like all these kind of things. What's going on in the world of Bogi currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a bit of a transition. As many folks might know, I've gotten into doing shop management coaching, and I was doing a lot of teaching, through WorldPack and STX, and doing a lot of, shop management training. And then I got on a national television show, and my life went in a totally different direction. Since that's now kind of wrapped itself up, and I'm turning the chapter on that. I'm getting back to my passion, which is helping shop owners provide better service to their customers and provide a better shop environment for their employees, and just to be more successful and more profitable. So really getting back to doing one-on-one coaching and helping shop owners with the very stuff that we've been talking about this whole episode. And it's just so much fun to do. I'm so glad to be back to it.
I love that. And you bring such great energy to it as well. I mean, honestly, I think anyone would be lucky to have the opportunity to work with you one-on-one like that. So
that.
we'll make sure, so we'll put in the show notes kind of how to reach you and how to contact you, because I'm sure there's probably some people you've made some really good points that are kind of looking at their own business and saying, okay, we could use some help here. So
everybody needs a coach, right?
Honestly, we all do. I mean, I say this all the time, pro athletes, people that are at the top of their game, best in the world, they have coaches, because we're all human and we need that kind of external view. So, but yeah, thank you again so much for spending the time. Really appreciate it, and for taking the time to share your knowledge with us as well. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Break Room, driven by ShopPros. To learn more about what ShopPros can do for your business, check out shoppros.com. If you like this episode, please leave us a comment or a review, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. The Break Room, where great automotive minds meet.